Hi, my name is Gibby Conrad. Welcome to the Apalachicola National Estuarine Research Reserve's 2020 Turtle Talks. We'll get to turtles in just a minute, but first, a word from our sponsor. The Apalachicola National Estuarine Research Reserve, or ANR for short, is one of 29 reserves in the United States dedicated to the study and preservation of estuaries. Our mission is probably pretty similar to all of our sister reserves. Basically, we collect scientific data and provide that data to both decision makers and the general public so that we can create better stewards for these important ecosystems. We have two basic questions that we hope that everyone who visits our center can answer. And first is simple. What is an estuary? The simple definition is where the river meets the sea. Another way to say that would be anywhere that fresh water from rivers mixes with salt waters from the sea, or in our case, the Gulf of Mexico. This is an aerial shot of our neighborhood. The red outlines show the Apalachicola River and its floodplains, which is the source of fresh water. The purple line is outlining the Gulf of Mexico. And right in the middle with the yellow is the estuary where the fresh and salt water are mixing. And our local estuary is called Apalachicola Bay. Second question is, why are estuaries important? And if we wanted to boil that down to one word, it would be productivity. Estuaries are among the most productive ecosystems on the planet. But it's not just oysters. Lots and lots of life depends on estuaries. Estuaries have the nickname of nursery or cradle to the oceans because so many marine species use estuaries for spawning grounds. It's estimated that 80 to 90% of seafood harvested from the Gulf of Mexico spend a portion of its life cycle in an estuary. So hopefully you can see why these areas are so important and why we need to protect them. All right, I promised that this would be a short commercial, so let's get on to our regularly scheduled program. Okay, so on to the sea turtles. First, we better figure out what a sea turtle is. Sea turtles are reptiles, just like all other turtles. They have a head, two eyes, and their mouth is made up of the beak and the lower jaw. The top part is called a beak because it's shaped more like a bird's beak. Shells are what most people think of when they think of turtles. And the shells are actually made up of the spine of the animal and its ribs that are fused together. The top part of the shell is called the carapace, the bottom is the plastron, and the ribs and the spine are connected by plates called scutes. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, there were books and cartoons that would show turtles taking their shells off. Obviously, a turtle would not be able to take its shell off if its spine is part of the shell, any more than you could take your spine out and survive. Sea turtles are specially designed to live in the open ocean, and they are very graceful and powerful in the water. They propel themselves through the water with their flippers. The powerful front flippers are used for propulsion, and the rear flippers are used to steer. When a female turtle comes ashore to nest, she's also going to use those flippers for nesting. She'll crawl up the beach using primarily her large, powerful front flippers, and her rear flippers actually will help her in digging her nest and covering the eggs. So where do these animals live? Well, we know they live in the oceans. They're called sea turtles, but they also are reptiles. So they are going to prefer the warmer waters of the ocean and live primarily in temperate and tropical oceans, this swath across the middle of the globe. And they're going to nest on tropical and subtropical beaches. And that includes all of the beaches of Florida, both on the Atlantic coast and the Gulf Coast. There are only 7 different species of sea turtles worldwide. Let's take a little closer look. First turtle swimming in is the loggerhead. This is going to be the most common turtle in our area. Then there's the green, the huge leatherback, smaller Kemp's Ridleys, the hawksbill with its ornate shell, the Australian flatback, and another Ridley, the olive Ridley. All of these turtle species are considered threatened or endangered, with the exception of the Australian flatback, and that's due to lack of information. We just don't really know enough about that species yet. The flatback and the olive Ridley are both more Pacific-related species, so we're not going to find them in Florida, so we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to them. And we are left with the 5 species that we do see in Florida waters. The hawksbill prefers warmer waters, so we tend to see them more down in the southern part of the state. So we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to him too. And the Kemp's Ridley, while we do see them in our waters, they do not nest on our beaches. So now we're left with the 3 species that do nest on local beaches. The loggerhead, the green, and the leatherback. And I told you these guys are giants. Believe it or not, this is close to the size of a real leatherback. They tend to average about 6 to 8 feet in length. So let's look at the leatherback first. They are a rare nester in the Panhandle, but we do see them about every 6 or 7 years. And last year, 2019 nesting season, we did have a few leatherback nests on our beaches. Leatherbacks are amazing animals, even for sea turtles. They are the only sea turtle that does not have a hard, fused shell. Their shell is actually, as their name implies, leathery, like a thick leather covering. It does still have scutes, but they're smaller and spread out throughout that leathery shell. That allows the shell to expand and contract. And that's important because the leatherback is one of the deepest diving, air-breathing animals on the planet, capable of descending to depths of 3,000 feet in the ocean. They also eat primarily soft-bodied animals like jellyfish, and the insides of their mouths and throats are covered in spines that help them to grab and swallow that slippery prey. Next up is the green sea turtle. And the green does not get its name from the color of its shell. It's actually the color of the fat in the animal is green. And these animals were harvested in large numbers for many, many, many years for the making of green turtle soup from that green fat in their bodies. They are occasional nesters here on our local beaches, generally every other year, and not in large numbers. However, the juveniles are very common in our waters locally, and because they are reptiles, they are subject to something called cold stunning. It gets cold here sometimes in the winter, and when the water temperature drops below a certain point, it affects these turtles, and sometimes that calls for massive rescue efforts, and this was a little juvenile green that was rescued from our local waters. If you look at the beak and the jaw of the green sea turtle, you may notice these kind of sharp, almost kind of fierce-looking teeth on the bottom. But these animals eat plants. They're herbivores, and those serrated teeth work more like a lawnmower as the turtle goes along, cutting those plants off of the bottom for its diet. Here you can see a sea turtle grazing on the bottom. The most common sea turtle in our area is the loggerhead sea turtle. They nest here every summer. And our population is said to be a distinct subpopulation, and what that means is genetically they are distinct from the rest of the sea turtles in the oceans. And it's these same sea turtles and their descendants that return to our local beaches every year. And unlike the herbivore green sea turtle, the loggerhead's large head and powerful jaws allows it to eat crustaceans and mollusks, hard shelled animals. And here we see a loggerhead trying to crush the shell of a mollusk to get at the soft-bodied animal inside. Nesting season here in the Panhandle lasts from May to October. The adult females come ashore multiple times, not just one nest, but they'll come ashore, make a nest, go back out for a while, come back in, another nest, so on. It's the job of our sea turtle patrols here at the reserve to survey these nests, monitor them throughout the nesting season, and try to protect them. So where are our local beaches? Again, we have the satellite view of our local neighborhood with our barrier islands. We are located basically right at the foot of the bridge going up to St. George Island and East Point. And our barrier islands from west to east are St. Vincent, Little St. George, and Dog Islands, and Caravelle Beach on the mainland. Also, occasionally we'll have a turtle come ashore. Not very often, but it did happen last nesting season in 2019. Many of these beaches are very dependent on volunteer efforts to help patrol the beach and monitor the nests. The St. Vincent Wildlife Refuge, the beaches of St. George, Dog Island, and Caravelle all require some effort from our volunteers. So, are you starting to think you might want to be a part of a nest patrol? Well, if you don't recognize the picture to the right there, you may want to rethink things. That is a picture of the sun rising. And that is when the sea turtle patrols get started every morning to walk local beaches. So you do have to be an early bird to be a turtle patroller. Sea turtles typically nest at night. And so we want to be out there right at sunrise, we can see, and find the nest before they're disturbed. So that's the reason for starting so early. The thing that they're going to be looking for when they're out patrolling the beaches are the tracks left by the females. They do leave very distinctive tracks in the sand. Remember, these animals are designed for swimming and covering long distances in the ocean, and they're very good at that. But when they get up on dry land, it's an effort for them just to crawl across the sand. We call their tracks that they leave in the sand crawls. Some of these crawls will lead to a nest, but others will not. So we're starting our patrol, and we're walking down the beach, and we come across our first crawl. So what are we going to be looking at? So the first thing we want to determine is whether this female made it ashore and then back to the water again. So we want to see which way did she crawl out and then back. And this turtle we can see came in out of the water, made a circle, crossed her own track, and went back out into the Gulf. So we know mom came in and went out. Next thing we need to determine is there a nest in this crawl? So what do we look for? First thing we're going to do is look to see if we see any mounds of sand within the crawl. No mound in this crawl. Then we look for sprayed sand, because the female turtle will try to cover her tracks and her nest site with sand to discourage predators from finding her nest. And in this case, no sprayed sand either, just the tracks coming and going. So this is what we call a false crawl. Mama came in, she looked around, for whatever reason, she decided that this wasn't a good place for her nest, so she went back out into the Gulf. We're going to keep looking. So we walk a little further down the beach. We find another crawl. We want to do the same things. Which way did Mom come in? Came in like that, in a circle. Almost followed her in tracks back out, but we can see that she did make it back out into the water again. So now, is this a nest? So we have to look for that mound. Do we have a mound this time? Well, maybe a little hard to see in the picture, but there is a mound of sand right there inside of where she crawled in. So that's a good sign. Do we have any sprayed sand? Yep, we got sprayed sand around the edges of the mound. So we have our first nest. We can see Mom came in. No, she didn't stand on her head to lay the eggs, but she dug that nest out with her rear flippers, deposited the eggs into the cavity, covered them back up again, sprayed sand with her front flippers, and then she turned around and headed back out into the water again. We know that the eggs are somewhere in this area, but we need to make sure that there are actually eggs in the nest and that this is a nest site. So we have another part to complete on this crawl, and that is to find the eggs. Here we see one of our trained Turtle Patrol groups out, and we see the guy down in the front of the picture, and he is looking for those eggs. Very important, this is trained staff and volunteers only. Never, 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 ever try to find eggs in a turtle nest. You can actually kill the turtles in their eggs by disturbing them in the nest. So he's just sticking his fingers gently down through the sand and trying to locate those eggs by touch. He's not going to dig them up. He's not going to move them. He's just confirming that there are actually eggs down there. And then once the eggs are located, they can be marked and then protected throughout the season. So the next step is to mark the nest. And the first thing that we would do, you've probably seen these out on the beach if you're regular visitors down here, a wire mesh will be laid over the whole top of the nest, and that's to discourage predation from larger animals. And then the site will be marked with PVC poles and flagging tape and a sign. And this is to alert human beachgoers that there is a turtle nest down there, so be careful, don't step on it, don't disturb it. All right, we're finished with that one. We're walking a little further down the beach and we come across this very strange looking crawl. So what's going on here? One side looks different than the other. But what's different about it? Let's look at them a little more closely. First thing we see is that one side there is an alternate crawl, and the other side is what's called an opposite crawl. And what we want to do is look for the flipper marks in the sand. And on this side we see these comma-shaped marks. And this is the alternate crawl. You can see how the way that the flipper marks are in the sand, it's almost as if a baby crawled across, leaving marks in the sand, alternate across from each other. And on the other side, we see chevron-shaped flipper marks, and they're directly across from each other, or opposite. So it's a different looking, both mark and the way that it's oriented. And we say on the left side, they're comma-shaped, right side, chevron-shaped. And then also on the right side, you have a tail drag. If you look right down the middle between those chevrons, you can see a continuous drag mark. So, do we think this is the same species? No, right? Completely different looking crawls. So what's going on here? On the left, we have the loggerhead, and on the right, we have the green. So we know that these were two different species of turtles that just happened to crawl up right across from each other. So we said we put the screens down to protect from predation. Predation is natural, but it can be increased by human activity. And one example of that would be introduced species. An example, fire ants, which can actually get into sea turtle nests and also attack the babies as they're coming out. And then we also can change habitats to the point that other animals self-introduce And that, a good example of that here on our beaches are coyotes. Remember that all sea turtles are threatened or endangered. They need a little extra help in their survival. And we document any predation on our nests so that we can hopefully adjust our strategies and the following year maybe cut down on that predation a little bit more. So what kind of predators are we talking about here? Well, believe it or not, this is the #1 predator on our beaches, the little ghost crabs, the ones that you see scurrying around on the beach at night. But these guys are not going to predate an entire nest. They'll go in, they'll eat an egg or two, and then that's plenty for them, and they'll go on about their business. That's not true of the larger predators, like our coyotes. They are capable of completely excavating a nest and eating every single egg. There's an example of that out on Little St. George Island. Birds also could be predators, usually more so of the babies than the eggs, but laughing gulls are one example, crows are another example. What about other predators? That look like a predator to you? Well, she could be. A dog can do just as much damage as a coyote, and we have very dog-friendly beaches around here. But we do ask that everybody keep their dogs on leashes. And one of the primary reasons for that is so that these dogs don't disturb not just nesting sea turtles, but nesting shorebirds and other animals. So please, if you're walking your dog on the beach, keep them on a leash. Do we have anything else to worry about? Well, here's a little something that was found in a nest out on St. George. That's a very large coachwhip snake. And certain species of snakes will sometimes burrow down into nests and eat the eggs. Another thing that can disturb nests are storms and the high storm surges that can come along with them that will sometimes wash over the beach. This again is a natural occurrence, and we will monitor the nests through storms and after storms. Because when a nest does get inundated, the eggs actually can drown in the nest if they're underwater for too long a period of time. And while we don't generally relocate eggs on our beach, we do still want to keep track of which nests have been affected by high storm surges. And this is ultimately what can happen if a nest is a little too close to the shore. When we get a big surge, the whole nest can actually just... So, on to phase 2. We've found the nests, we've marked them, we've tried to reduce predation, tried to protect them. Now, we're looking for the signs that these nests have successfully hatched. This is going to take about 55 to 60 days for the species that nest on our beaches. And one of the things we're going to look for, just like we look for mom's big tracks, we're going to look for these little teeny tiny tracks, and hopefully lots of them headed towards the water. We're also going to look for a depression in the nest, and to the untrained eye, this could actually look like maybe there was predation here, that something got in there and dug the nest up. But actually, as those eggs are hatching out and the turtles are leaving the nest, that's creating a void in the nest that the sand eventually collapses down in and creates that depression. And these babies are usually hatching out at night. And the reason for that is that they find their way to the water by the reflection of the light off of the water at night. This keeps them crawling in the right direction towards the water. All right, now it's the awe picture.
Okay, this is what we want to see. A little hatchling come out of the nest, and he's trying to find his way to the water. And if you look at the way he's crawling, you can see how those alternate flipper marks are made, both by the little hatchling and the moms. Okay, he's made it down to the beach. Watch how much trouble even this little bit of shell hash gives him as he's trying to make his way, so you can imagine if it was bigger stuff, how much trouble he would have. Let's hope there's no laughing gulls flying overhead. gonna make it? Oh, a little bit of water. And he's in. And watch how fast he goes off now that he's in the water.
So are we done? No, we have one thing left in our job as turtle patrol. And that's to determine the success of this nest. And the way we do that is after the time has passed for either the nest to hatch, or we may know enough days have gone by and we haven't seen any evidence of hatching. We need to excavate the nest. Again, trained staff only. Do not do this yourself. And we're going to count all of the eggs. We're going to see how many hatched, see if we see any signs of predation, and also any unhatched eggs. And all of that will be documented, along with any other disturbances like overwash. And this is our final step as beach patrol. Once those little turtles get into the water, that's it. We can't really monitor them once they go beyond the beach. But we do have a pretty good idea of where they go. They go out into an area of the Atlantic called the North Atlantic Gyre, and all oceans have these things called gyres in them, which are these big circular currents that spin around. And in the middle of the Atlantic Gyre is something called the Sargasso Sea, which is big mats of floating seaweed. And we know this is where our loggerhead babies wind up in their very early stages, and they stay here for up to about 13 years. But we know very, very little about what's going on out here in the open ocean. And so we refer to this period in the turtle's life as the lost years. So now they've made it through adolescence, but they still have a way to go, because a sea turtle doesn't mature until it reaches about 30 years of age. So even after they finish there, they've still got a ways to go before they become sexually mature and nest. The females will return to the same general area that they hatched from as a baby 30 years earlier. The male sea turtles will never return to land again. Once they reach the ocean, they're going to stay in the ocean the rest of their life. So that was a lot of stuff for this little guy to go through, right? And because of that, it's thought that only about 1 in 1,000 hatchlings will make it to an adult reproducing turtle. And some studies say it's worse than that. It could be as much as 1 in 10,000. Now, once they get to be a mature turtle in the water, do they have any other threats? Well, yeah, one of them, a big threat these days, is the development of beachfront. Whether that's building houses and condos or seawalls, anything that changes the beach means habitat loss for these nesting female turtles. Boat collisions do happen occasionally with big turtles in the open water. And another problem is fisheries bycatch. These days, trawlers, the types of boats that you see here in Apalachicola that shrimp, and in other parts of the world actually catch other things, all trawlers in U.S. waters these days are required to pull TEDs, turtle excluder devices, in their nets to release the turtles before they drown accidentally. But there are also what are called ghost nets. That are nets that broke loose and are floating around in the open ocean. And here we see a case of a turtle that got tangled up in one of those lost nets. Fish hooks also can be a big problem. Pollution can cause issues, and that can be water pollution, and it also can be trash in the water. Plastic trash, in particular, can be a real problem. Remember our big leatherback who eats primarily soft-bodied animals, jellyfish. Well, a jellyfish to a sea turtle, a plastic bag might look like a jellyfish floating in the water. And if this animal ingests that plastic, it gets trapped in his digestive system, and chances are the turtle will not survive. Diseases, there are certain diseases that sea turtles can contract, and some studies seem to show that human influences like pollution may be causing those diseases to increase. And if you notice one thing about this list, pretty much all human-introduced problems. So let's take a look at our nesting data over the past few years, because it is positive, very positive, I would say. These are the combined numbers of sea turtle nests on our managed beaches. And you can see 2016, almost 800 loggerhead nests, no green turtle nests that year. Following year, even more loggerheads, 791, and the addition of 24 of the green nest. You can see how the green sea turtles come every other year, generally, the nest. Then 2018, we had a drop down to 355 and no greens. And then last year, again, back up, 664 on the loggerheads, and a record year for greens at 27 nests. So we see somewhat of a cyclical nature going on here in these nests. So let's look at a little bit longer stretch of time and all of Florida beaches. So we're looking at 1989 through 2018 in this case, and we can see that there is a cyclical path to these nesting numbers. This is still a relatively short period of time, but we think that this is probably indicative of sea turtle nesting in general, that it does go up and down. So what can you do to help these endangered and threatened animals? Well, FWC has come up with a saying that we have adopted, and that is to keep the beach clean, dark, and flat. So what does that mean? Let's start with clean. Pretty obvious. Pick up trash, whether it's your trash or somebody else's trash. If you see a plastic bag on the beach, please pick it up, dispose of it properly. Plastic bottles, any trash. It's a big help, not just for the sea turtles, but for lots of other life. And then just keeping the beaches looking nice. Second thing is to take everything that you take to the beach in the morning back off the beach at night. And this can be kind of a pain. Some people don't really like to have to do that, especially if they're the type of folks that create their own little city on the beach when they go down every morning. But all of this stuff can be obstacles for turtles, whether it's tents, canopies, umbrellas, coolers, chairs. And in addition, in this picture, we have jet skis or Hobie cats or anything. Any of that can be an obstacle for a turtle. And we're not doing this to be mean or to cause you to have to do something that you don't want to do on your vacation. It is important, and we actually did pass a leave no trace ordinance here in Franklin County. And if you do leave your stuff on the beach, come down the next morning, you may find one of these yellow tags attached to it. And basically what this is saying is if you don't take your stuff off of the beach by 9 o'clock at night, the county can and will confiscate your belongings and take them to the dump. So if you don't want that happening, please pick up your stuff. And again, we're not doing this to be a pain. Turtles can and do get trapped in the things that humans leave on the beach overnight. Sea turtles cannot go in reverse on the land. So when she's crawling along, if she crawls under something and gets stuck, that's it. She can't go anywhere. She's trapped there until somebody comes along and turns her loose. And if she's there too long, she could potentially die. And babies also, the little hatchlings also can get caught up in the things we leave on the beach overnight. So that's clean. How about dark? Yeah, it seems pretty obvious, right? A lot of big houses built right on the edge of the beach. People want everybody to see what a nice house they have and how pretty it is, so they light it up. But after 9 o'clock, we ask that you draw your shades and turn your lights off. We don't want to see the house looking like this at night. We want to see it like this. And again, that is because the turtles orient towards the light off of the water. And if the light on the beach side is brighter, it will disorient the turtles, whether it's the babies, like in this case, who came out of the nest and just started doing circles. They couldn't figure out which way to go because the beach side lighting was brighter than the light off of the water. And the females, too, will get disoriented. We've had a number of instances where sea turtles crawl completely over the dunes and out into the road on St. George Island just because they're disoriented by the lights. So remember, after 9, it's turtle time. Close the curtains and blinds, turn off the outside lights.
If you're going to walk the beach at night, make sure that you're using a turtle-safe flashlight that emits a red light. This won't disturb the turtles.
All right, so that's clean and dark. About flat. Mama turtles dig holes in the sand to deposit their eggs. Humans dig holes in the sand. I'm not sure why, but they do. And build sand castles, and some of these holes can get really large. If a hole is large enough to swallow a human child, it is large enough to swallow a turtle. So while this kid can back out of the hole and go on with his day, Mama sea turtle falls down in there, she may not be able to get back out again. And if a baby goes into the bottom of the deep hole, they are definitely not going to make it back out again. So we ask that you clean up your sandcastles, knock them down, fill in your holes before you go up to the house at night. You can always rebuild them the next day. And this is what we want to see. We want to see a nice flat beach that these little hatchlings can make their way easier and safer to the water. So, you're doing all the right things, but what if you see a turtle in trouble? What should you do? You should not try to rescue them yourself. FWC is the group that's in charge of protecting sea turtles. They have easy phone numbers for your cell phone, star FWC or hashtag FWC, also an 800 number. And you should use this if you see a stranded turtle, if you see a turtle that's become disoriented and wound up on the wrong side of the dune line, or if you see people harassing turtles. Don't try to fix that yourself. Call the authorities, and that is FWC. Is there anything else you can do? Well, sea turtle programs, like everything, cost money. We have interns that come down here every summer, and they are dependent on some of these programs to support them when they're here. If you're a Florida resident, you can buy a sea turtle license plate. A fair amount of our money for interns comes from the proceeds of these licenses. Every year, FWC produces stickers like this one, and they're different every year. You can collect a different one every year if you'd like to. Get information on these stickers by going online to myfwc.com/seaturtle. You can volunteer if you want to get up early enough, and you can commit an entire summer to do it. And if you want your money to go directly to the AINER programs, you can adopt a nest. So let's look a little bit at this Adopt a Nest program. So if you have a nest out in front of your house, or you just want to help support the effort here locally, you can adopt a sea turtle nest on St. George Island. And you do that by going to adoptanest2020.eventbrite.com. And that will lead you through it. And then our Sea Turtle Patrol people will keep you updated on your nest throughout the nesting season, let you know its success. And you will have the ability to really help us out. So, one more time. What can you do to help these animals out? Keep the beach, say it with me, clean, dark, and flat. And we know what that means now. Call the hotline if you see any problems with sea turtles. Star FWC, hashtag FWC. Support turtle programs. Again, the license plates, the stickers, volunteer, or the Adopt a Nest program. Keep the beach clean, dark, and flat, and I'm sure the sea turtles will thank you.